All right, guys, we're back with another episode of Talking Preps. We're going into week 8, I believe, this week. I don't have Cam to answer me and make sure I'm right. I'm thinking it's week 8. We got a really busy show. I'm going to get right to it. Monday, guys, we have some big news break Monday night. New Bern is going to have to forfeit the 2022 title. They were found to use some ineligible players and they have to forfeit the state title game. The championship will be vacated. It will not go to Greensboro Grimsley, who they beat. New Bern will be on probation this year. As you know, the head coach had resigned last June. The principal and high school counselor were put on probation, suspended with pay. A new principal is ultimately named. Alex, I'll start with you. Just real quick, your thoughts here on New Bern forfeiting this title.
First and foremost, just unfortunate all the way around for student athletes who were impacted not only on the field, but more importantly, we're talking about credits and advancing to the next grade and graduation and being in position to advance to post-secondary higher education. So just unfortunate all the way around. But once again, just a reminder to us all of the vitality of double and triple checking compliance details at all levels, from coach to athletic director to principal. Always, always, always just vital processes, but just so sad all the way around.
Gary, your thoughts?
Two things. One, the schools that New Bern beat were denied an opportunity to move further on in the playoffs because they got defeated by an ineligible team. And the second is it gives ammunition to those forces in the General Assembly that says, look, the NCHSAA should have caught this before it happened. So that's one of the things that they will probably use as a talking point as to why they need to intercede in the athletic association.
Dale, is the penalty fair because the 22 team is gone? So why a lot of people say, well, why take the title away?
You still have to penalize. The bad thing is the innocent kids that are involved, and there are many of the kids are innocent in this. This is an adult situation, an adult created situation. But I think you still have to penalize. You can't just let stuff be swept under the rug. Sam said about they still get to keep their rings. Yeah, they do, but at least the record books will not recognize it.
All right, let me stick with you, Dale. The Senate Bill 452 on Monday became the law of the land. So the association is going to be stripped of a lot of power considerably. What's your reaction to it? I know you've had a lot to say.
Well, I have, and I've been busy on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, today, and I will get busier. I've already, I did one retweet of things today, hoping that the governor might see it before he went to look at it and possibly veto. He didn't sign it, but he didn't veto it.
Right. Well, a veto would just have been a roadblock.
But my reaction, Langston, is just plain. We don't have enough time to get my complete reaction, but some of the things that have been said.
Yeah.
When you go back to look at our interview, the things that we were told that were factually incorrect, the fact that things that have been said since are factually incorrect is really a concern. Are they intentionally factually incorrect, or are they that ignorant? I mean, there's only two choices here. There's no third choice of being factually incorrect. I think
there's a possibility, and Gary, I'll throw this one to you. I think there's a possibility that the senators are really truly hearing these things from people, but I think it might be a small minority of people that don't represent the larger body of the NCHSAA. Is that possible, or do you kind of decide with what Dale said?
I think what has happened is a lot of people that signed on to the bill did so out of party loyalty. You do this for me, I'll do this for you. Not thinking of the repercussions of it, not looking at it that it shouldn't be a political issue to begin with. It's a kid's issue. It's what's best for all kids in high school. But we're in that time period now where people want to ban books and they want to control what's being taught in the classroom. and
Yeah.
they want to eliminate things that are already been taught in the classroom. And so this is just another step in that direction as far as education is concerned. I said a long time ago, and I'm gonna say it again. I don't care who likes it or not. They hated the fact that a woman, specifically a black woman,
Black
told them,
woman.
"No, we don't do it that way."
Right.
And they said, "Well, we're gonna change that." And you
They're
know,
saying, I mean, as you guys see on the screen, what Destin Hall from Caldwell County said, they think this bill is going to ensure transparency and accountability. You know, we've seen a lot from the senators in recent days about they said the association didn't give monies back to the schools or enough monies back to the schools. They feel like they collect a lot of money. Alex, you seen what Mr. Hall's saying here? Your comment about his quote and also about the bill becoming law.
First and foremost, collecting a lot of money from the children of this state is another factual inaccuracy right there, because none of this money with which some of these legislators are up in arms or whatever you want to call it is collected from the children of this state. These are funds which are collected per repercussions of adult situations like the one we just discussed at the beginning of the program.
Mhm.
So it's not as though the children of this state and their actual funds are being undercut in this case. Now, we can talk semantics all you want to, but I want to say this. SB 452 is the law of the land now. So all I want to know is, forget who won't do this, the association can't do this, the association can't do that, or whatever. I want to know who will. We discussed last week the reality of this new appeals process. I'm anxious to see I'll use 452 in not in honor, but in recognition of Senate Bill 452. I'm anxious to see how the 452 appeals 23 hours and 50 minutes before the state playoffs begin in any sport are going to be handled by
That,
whom.
that's a
I'm
very
anxious
real that's a
to
very real
see.
concern. And Dale, I'll give you the last word here. But one thing I'm concerned about is they said the association can't pursue corporate sponsorships. That allows them to have championships at the college venues. We all know, Gary. You remember last year what basketball was like at the high school sites. It was an unmitigated disaster. Even Reynolds Coliseum wasn't big enough for the 1A and 3A state championships. What happens when every state championship probably has to go back to campus and we're sitting in Greensboro, Grimsley, because they're going to say that's the biggest, football stadium in the state, with a press box this big with 50 people wanting to get in it, and you can't stay there all day. I could go on and on, but your final thoughts, Dale.
Just like I tweeted today, and we're going to go away from this, we have the most professionally ran state championships and playoffs, but state championships. They are top notch. The venues, the organization of them, just everything about them. If you go to other state championships in other states, and I've been to state championships in a couple of other states, there's nothing like it. So what's going to happen? Uh, we're not going to have those professionally ran. We're going to have what we had back in the 90s, the 80s and 90s when you played on school campuses, and we're just not going to be able to handle it. It's not going to be a good situation, and I will be saying more on Twitter. So I do want to say, please follow me. Anybody seeing this, please share this. Please share our interview from or our last episode, our two interviews with the senator and Q Tucker. Let people make sure people see this and contact your representatives and your senator and let
How do
them
people
know.
how do people find you on Twitter, Dale?
How do they find Johnson
How
or
do they find
me?
you?
Me
So
at
people
Dale
find
Ross. Real simple, at Dale Ross on X.
it's X now. It's
Please,
not. It's not Twitter. It's X now.
exactly. I know, and I will. I'm gonna. I've got a lot more to say, Langston, and I'll be saying it there.
All right, Gary, I'm gonna give you the floor on this one. Georgia's making some big changes. They're getting NIL. We still don't have NIL. Students have to not notify school administrators within 7 days of reaching an agreement. Georgia's also going back to just a 6A class, no more 7A in Georgia. And here's the solution, I think, Gary, for charter schools in North Carolina. Georgia says private schools in classes 1A, 3A are going to play in a separate state championship, one classification, and I put them in there using a power ranking to determine playoff seedings. I think that's the easiest way to solve our charter school problem in North Carolina. Anyway, your thoughts about these changes and how they might reflect on us in the.
I like number three. Number two, I always thought 7A was a lot of classifications. And if you consider that uh, Georgia and North Carolina are relatively the same size population wise, so you
Mm,
would have to think they probably have the same number of high schools. In fact, I would think that North Carolina, because we have three major regions, Charlotte, Raleigh, Greensboro, um, probably fit that classification situation better than Georgia, because all Georgia's big schools are around Atlanta.
right.
Uh, so, I don't know how many schools we're in each class. That doesn't seem like a big deal to me. The NIL, though, North Carolina's always been slow to react to money things. The lottery, is one. Sports betting,
Mm,
casinos. We always want to see what everybody else is doing before
good
we
point.
react to it.
Touche. Touche. Touche.
We always want to see what are they going to do in Virginia, Tennessee, and South Carolina. And once they see that money's leaving North Carolina, then we react.
Mm.
Instead of uh, being the leader in that, we are always the follower. So, we'll watch and see what happens in Georgia and then Virginia, and then the legislature will get involved and they'll try to figure out how they can get a cut of it too, and we'll
Yeah,
react.
that's fact. That's fact.
Okay, Alex, I got two questions for you. Do you agree with me that number three would work for charter schools in North Carolina? And do you think that maybe the NCHSAA or what used to be the NCHSAA could handle private school and public school playoffs?
Well, as for the reality of charter school classifications, there isn't a cut and dry answer for two reasons. Number one, charter schools always will be driven by numbers and numbers realities. And that will always be a mitigating factor, even in a situation, if you look at schools that might be size 1A or size 3A, that's still a pretty sizable discrepancy,
Mm.
particularly in cases of charter schools, from in terms of what a 1A size school would be in a 3A size school. So you'd still run into to some of those same challenges. So it's not a one size fits all.
I'm on record. Put the charter schools in their own playoff bracket. Let them play it out, rank them, and all of that. But we got to go. It's time to reveal. We're going to do 16 Mr. Football finalists. We're going to break them up in Elite Eights. So right now we got Coach Griner with his Elite Eight, and then we'll be back later on with Grax with his Elite Eight as we break it down and get to the number one player in the state around Christmas time.
What's going on, Grinder? It's that time of year again. The journey to selecting the best high school football player in the state of North Carolina. Yep, that's it. It's Mr. Football time. So we have our Sweet 16, as we can call it, the takeoff of the rankings. Let's go ahead and get into it. So, Grinder, we're going to split this off in alphabetical order. You got an 8-pack that you're going to talk about, and I've got an 8 that I'm going to talk about. Let's first kick it to your list. You've got an impressive list of eight of these Sweet 16 guys. Can you talk a little bit about them?
Yeah, I think these guys have earned their keep to be in the top 16 in alphabetical order. This is not number 1 through 8. Just want to talk about these guys and highlight them. First on the list is Ben Black. I've went against this athlete myself. He is probably the most explosive player I've seen to date this year in high school football. He can return kicks. He can make plays as DB. If he catches a screen, he can go 80 yards. We've seen it multiple times. His explosion, height, awareness of the field, does it all. Plays Ironman football, and he does it with a team that actually has about 150 players on it. So you know that he's that good, that they're not utilizing him. I mean, they're utilizing him the best they possibly can, even though they have a lot of depth. The next on the list is our reigning defending champ, Jaden Davis from Providence Day, quarterback, senior this year. He is doing a performance even better than last year. It's going to be very tough to defeat this guy in Mr. Football, but Jaden Davis is leading his team to an undefeated season at the moment, doing a great job, number 1 on the Sweet 16 list. Next on the list is Micah Gilbert from Charlotte Christian, down the road, competitive with Providence Day. big receiver, does a lot of things. A lot of people are double covering him, and he's doing amazing things even in double coverage. They're doing very creative things to get him the ball, like halfback passes and things like that, to still get him behind the defense, doing great things, big numbers. Heavily recruited Jack Larson out of Charlotte Catholic, tight end, senior as well, doing amazing things. Great blocker. He's the typical guy you see going to the Notre Dames of the world. They have like 5 tight ends. He is one of those guys, huge. He is everything their team is about. Big-time player, Jack Larson, competing. Zach Lawrence, Butler Jr. quarterback. Butler is rising up the ranks. They had a downfall in the first week. They lost. After that, they've been ripping through the rankings, climbing up in the Sweet 16, winning big games, won the game in Virginia as well. But Zach Lawrence at the helm, at quarterback, putting up big numbers. He's always had great 7-on-7 deals, but this year he's really translating to 11-man football, doing a great job for Butler. Zay Jones, Scotland County, they always keep a running back in the back pocket. He is leading their team, doing everything they possibly can over there in Scotland County. We'll look to see them coming out of the East with this guy running the rock. Numbers unbelievable. Jordan Shipp, Providence Day wide receiver. If you ask me personally, I think he's the best player in the state, top, regardless of position. What he does on the field is amazing. What he does off the field is even better. Met this guy in person. If you had to ask me today, what's the one player that I would want to have out of North Carolina, it would be this player, Jordan Shipp. Unbelievable player. Everything he does from weight room, the best hands I've ever seen at wide receiver. His father was pretty good himself, but I think his son's going to be a little bit better. So look out for him having big numbers the rest of the year. And then last but not least, Jaden Smith, defensive player. Very hard to get in this list. Already has 2 touchdowns on the year on defense. Unbelievable sack track record. Has 7 sacks on a year and 15 tackles for loss. Doing an amazing job with his stats, leading his team to an undefeated season so far. Big game coming up this week. Hopefully he can retain that and stay in the Sweet 16 and climb up the ladder. Those are my 8 right now.
Thank you for that, Griner. That is a wonderful list of 8 there. We'll be back later in the show, actually, for my 8. Can't wait to show you guys what we have for these 16 for Mr. Football for 2023.
Thanks for that, Sam. Appreciate you. Grice will be back later on with his Elite 8 as we find out who are the best players in North Carolina right now. Next up, Chris Hughes is in with his rankings and his games of the week, and we're going to get the other guys on screen, and we're going to take a quick break. But meanwhile, get yourself some Deer Park water.
Deer Park is celebrating its 150th anniversary.
Deer Park? That's good water.
You can taste how pure Deer Park is.
Deer Park, that's good water.
Deer Park, that's still good water.
All right, guys, here we are coming back, talking preps, North Carolina, going into the week 8 of the North Carolina high school football season, and it's time to look at the rankings. We've had, kind of reaching that midway point of this 17-week season, and there we are. We're going to start with 8-man. Again, I've been a big proponent of 8-man football, and we'll talk a little bit more about it here in a little bit later in the show in Chris's corner. But once again, this is the same lineup previous weeks, not a lot of changes. You still got Wayne Christian, a team that I'm just really excited about. I want to talk a little bit about them here momentarily. Halifax, Rendell Parrott, or Parrott Academy, as some people know it. John Paul. I mean, again, this is some really good football. We're going to move it on forward and look at the 11-man private. Again, we've got 2 of the most exciting teams, not only in the state of North Carolina, but really in the Southeast, leading the way there. Providence Day, Raven Gap, then there you see Charlotte Christian. And I do think that there's a fairly, I'm not going to say an enormous gap, but somewhat of a sizable gap there between number 1 and number 2. I think those are obviously just teams of different animals right there, 1 and 2. Hickory Grove, a team that I like. Metrolina Christian, they got a big game coming up this Friday. A great team. Again, these are some really good teams. We've seen firsthand just how well these teams have faced off against some of the best public schools. Even South Carolina.
What did you think of that Raven Gap Christian game, though? Were you surprised at that result, or did you think that was about kind of what you expected?
About what I thought. In fact, I thought it could have been a little bit more, but two touchdown spread or so is about what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, I've seen that Raven Gap team up close. I mean, they've got the defensive line that would just, they would handle themselves very well against anybody. Mallard Creek, Butler, Independence, you name it.
Also, you got to take into accountability that Charlotte Christian, lost, their head coach, moved on to different things. I thought he was really good at adjusting and making things complicated, maybe with lesser talent. And, now they're readjusting. I'm not saying their coach now can't do that. It's just you got to build that identity within the team. And I don't think Christian has quite gotten that out of what they've had in the past. So they'll get there, though.
I don't disagree with you there, Sam. Losing a coach like that is definitely hard on the program. But Coach James has done a great job there at Christian, and I think that program is only going to elevate even higher. Let's take a look at the North Carolina 1A football rankings. Once again, Mount Airy, Tarboro leading the way. Robbinsville, again, even with that loss to Raven Gap, they're number 3. Drone's a team that I keep saying is going to be a problem in the 1A West playoffs. And then, again, you got some of the best in the Smoky Mountain Conference. I kind of like to talk about them just because of the excellence in that league. Murphy right there, Swain. They've got like a trio of games in that conference that are all on the best of the best in the state level this week. Eastern Randolph's a team that's really played a tough schedule and kind of inched their way up into the rankings. And another team that's just on the fringes, West Columbus. They were in the top 10 a few weeks ago. They knocked off a perennial 2A power in Whiteville Friday night. A little bit unexpected on my side, and I think they'll be finding their way back in the rankings here really soon.
Guru, I think looking at that 1A bracket, is that Smoky Mountain Conference, pound for pound, one of the best conferences that you can see in the state.
Really?
I'm excited for that Murphy-Robbinsville game coming up. I feel like we see them play 3 times a year in the playoffs. We see them in the regular season, and they just always have 2 or 3 really good teams, and that 4th or 5th team always is probably good enough in any 1A conference to probably win it.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back and look at it since the recorded history of the NCHSAA, I think that conference has won somewhere along the lines of 23, 24, 25 state championships. Robbinsville had their era of dominance in the 70s and 80s with Bob Colvin. And then, of course, the David Gentry teams with Murphy, that's just been dominant after dominant teams for decades and decades and decades. So, yeah, I agree. I think that, pound for pound, from a competitive level from top to bottom, is probably one of the best 1A school conferences in the state. Or conferences in general. I shouldn't just say 1A.
Yeah, I was going to say pound for pound, they're there. They can hold their weight compared to any of them. I mean, you're talking about conferences and not just one team. I agree. But yeah,
absolutely. Let's take a look here to 2A rankings. Not a lot of mix-up, even with a couple of the top 2A teams losing. They still are here in the top 10 rankings. Clinton right there, number 1. I don't think that's even debatable for anybody. Again, Monroe right there with them. Monroe had that big victory over Forest Hills. And as you can see, Forest Hills is still coming in here in the rankings, as is West Lincoln, who lost at Donnybrook of a game to Bunker Hill. Again, I think these are some of the best rankings. And I told Langston this on Saturday, and this is what's making me feel like these rankings are really good when you have an entire week and they don't really change that much, which I think these teams are really seated in the most appropriate spots. East Duplin, defending state champions. Northeastern had that 1-point victory over Hertford County, who, again, is right there in the mix. I think they're like 13 or 14 in my rankings.
East Gaston's probably lurking from the outside trying to get
East Gaston, well. I believe, is somewhere around 16th. But if you really look at the big scale of 2A football, you can go about 20, 25 teams deep in 2A football and find some really good football teams that are going to go around to that 4th, 5th, 6th round of the playoffs.
And I think, too, with East Gaston, and I was looking at that with Bern. So, you got, again, we don't have them on this list, but you're going to have to see Shelby. That's going to be a big test, I think, for East Gaston. I think they've got Shelby and Burns in back-to-back weeks, if I'm not mistaken. Absolutely. That's really going to test their mettle and show if they're a team that can go deep within the 2A playoffs.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at the 3A. Once again, Dudley is back on top, and to me, it comes down to defense. I think Crest may have the most explosive offense, but again, that defense right now to me is the answer. Griner, I'll give you a chance to talk about this in a moment, but again, you see your West Charlotte Lions right there, number 3, 71st. Impressive victory over Cape Fear on Friday. Kings Mountain, again, is a team that I really like. They're a team that really does get on D, as Alex Bass likes to say. I like that Kings Mountain team. Scotland County is a team that I think is not going to go away. But, looking at the 3A, I think that top 6 has really separated themselves, in my opinion. I think you got this top 6, and then you got everybody else. But, again, 3A is one of those competitive conferences that are competitive classifications that you can go 30, 35, 40 teams deep and find some really good, 8, 9, 10 8 or 9 win teams.
No, I agree. I'm like looking at that list. I mean, like you just and we're moving. I'm moving ahead. But I just go so excited to that last week of the season. I can't wait till we have that list. It's probably gonna be 20 games deep of just teams. Like I'm looking at this Kings Mountain and Crest game there at the end. As they prepare, for a tough playoff period there. I mean, the Dudley game. I mean, that Dudley Smith game used to be such a rivalry, but goodness, I mean, in the
Yeah.
city of Greensboro, all my friends talking about just the craziness of that game and how Dudley probably could have put 100 on them if they really wanted to. But again, like you said, we'll talk West Charlotte and Huff later
And
on. We talked Crest. We talked about QB Husky there.
yeah.
I'm just excited to see this Hickory, Coach Glass out there showing what he can do.
Mm-hmm.
Scotland County, Zay Jones there running the ball. That's to me, that's kind of like that West Charlotte. I feel like of the East in some kind of way, just going to get through of running the ball and just making sure we're going to run down your throat. Maybe some of the old grinder there, just running that ball down your throat and playing good hard defense. So I'm excited this 3A group. I think you've got a lot of great teams here.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think 3A this year we can definitely put our hat on it that it's as deep as it was in 4A the last couple of years. Anybody can emerge out of there. There's some sneaky teams. We went
Yeah,
7-on-7.
Robinson's there. Yeah.
Northwest.
We
Missouri.
went 7-on-7 with Hickory in the summer. They're a good football team. Like you said. No matter what we do, we can't branch up out of the 3 from Chris. But it's a lot better. I don't think we were ranked in the top 10 in the beginning of the year, maybe 10th. But it's we'll make them a believer soon enough.
I think you're 10th. You win Friday night, and you very well could be 1 or 2. That's a given.
Guys,
So,
and Huff is a really good football team.
really good team. And I know you'll look at our picks, and you'll see that I picked Huff, and I that's just because I think Huff is a really, really good team coach. But you guys, I'm really proud of what I see from you each week. And here we go. Let's take a look at the 4A Fight Club again. Grimsley number 1. No surprise there. Butler right there with them. I think that Butler team, especially on defense, is one of the most aggressive that I've seen. You want to talk about some dogs that Coach Hales has. It ain't no more than puppy dogs like TK used to say in the old days. That defense has a little bit of bite to it. Weddington, again, that top 3, I think that is far and away the top 3 teams. But Rollsville right there in the mix, and they got a big game against Millbrook. I'll talk about that here in a moment. Huff, again, you know a lot about them, Sam. And then looking at the bottom half, Mooresville, talk about a team that gets on defense. Talk about a team that can run the ball. That's a pretty good program. Cleveland, Hoggard, Watauga, Chambers. I just think that's some really good teams. To go back to what you guys said, I think 3A is really, really competitively deep. I think the gap between 6 or 7 and 3A to about 25 or 30 is not very big. Because there's just so many good 3A teams. But on the flip side, I think 4A, I think you got some really, really top-heavy teams, and then I think it goes down quickly.
I mean, I think one team that's, the record might not say so, they played a tough schedule. You'll see Mallard Creek start creeping back into the top 10 as the year goes on. I think that they figure some things out offensively. They have some very explosive players, and 2 or 3 guys can take 70, 80-yard touchdowns. And if they get that playing with the defense, they're going to be tough team to beat as well.
And that's what I was going to say, Grinder. I think at 4A you really see teams where their record doesn't necessarily dictate where they are. I think you'll have situations like Mallard Creek playing a national type schedule that doesn't have that record, but when they're on, they can play with any of the teams on this list, as you mentioned. I mean, you have other teams there that have shown, and you'll have teams maybe that don't play as tough a schedule. Like you got a Watauga there. I think they're always there until either they have to come down that mountain or that right team goes up that mountain to really
down the mountain. He said.
Hey, sometimes that's the thing. 'Cause they're actually, I think in the latest RPI, I think they're either 1 or they're close to it. But I mean, you look at that example from a 32 could be, like we were 32 on that list, and comparing them to playing a Chambers or playing even a Mooresville, even though we lose by 7 in that game, it's like you have a lot of talent that you're looking at. Certain teams that maybe are in the 10th or 15th spot, you're like, nah, I don't want to play them, so. 4A, just you get that extra level of just the competition, the schedules can really create some divergence between great teams with great records or teams with great records who haven't proven themselves.
Absolutely. Great insight, man. Hey, I want to take a look at the top games outside of the Charlotte area. So let's go ahead and play that theme music. All right, man. We're going to take a look at the top games for Week 8 here in the state of North Carolina. Let's talk about a big duo of games playing up there in Wake County. Some big 4A matchups that I think are going to really tell the tale for Eastern North Carolina football, especially come to playoff time. 5-1 Rollsville going to travel down Spring Forest Road to take on 5-1 Millbrook. You got two excellent QB1s going at it in that game. Braden Atkinson from Rollsville. Mason Fortune, who, by the way, was a football finalist for Mr. Football last year. I think he's already tossed for about 1,500 yards and 15 TDs this year. So that's going to be a big game. Looking over here at the Battle of 540, a game that might not be very friendly. They might be crosstown rivals, but I don't think it's going to be a very friendly game. You got Apex Friendship going over to take on Apex, 2 5-1 teams. Apex Friendships, Jaden Avery is one of those grinder kind of guys. I really like that guy. But Apex Senior, Javion Dancy is, he's just a straight baller. He's had about 5 straight 100-yard games in that game. So I think that's going to be a good duo of games in Raleigh. Let's look over in Western North Carolina. You got two Titans that are going to clash in Hendersonville. You got 6-0 Pisgah traveling over to 7-0 West Henderson. Pisgah's that blue-collar team, that bring your lunch pail to work kind of team that kind of resembles their head coach, Brett Chappell. West Henderson has won 19 of 20 games. They've got two studs that I really like a lot. That's Carson Dimsdale and True Emmanuel, the big wideout. I think he's on the Shrine Bowl roster. That's going to be a really good game. You got two Alamance County teams that are going to go at it. You got Burlington Williams fresh off of that emotional 1-point victory over Cross County rival Eastern Alamance. Well, hey, they got to do it again this week. They're going to face up against a really rugged and tough Western Alamance game, Western Alamance team here on Friday. We got an enormous 2A, 3A clash going at each other up there in Nash County Friday. You got Rising Power Nash Central who travels over to Northern Nash, just going to cross Highway 64. That's a pretty close rivalry. Coach Chris Lee, that Bulldog team he's got, they're really rising in the 2A ranks. They've won about 15 of the last 20 games. But Northern Nash, in my opinion, has already established themselves as a true statewide contender. Andrew Ferris, we've had him as a coach of the week a few weeks ago. He is just phenomenal. They've got a receiver, Randall King, who just jumps out of the film on you when you look at film on film. Again, I think that's a team that's going to be playing deep in the rounds, if not making it to the championship game once again. Okay, if I wasn't going fast enough, let's do the lightning round. Looking down east, we got 3 enormous games Friday night. Jacksonville at Havelock, that's 2 5-1 teams, or 5-1 and 5-0. White Oak and West Carteret. Talk about two of the most known or underappreciated teams. That White Oak team in Jacksonville, they've done a phenomenal job in recent years going over to place West Carteret, who, again, I think is just really under the radar. Ashley at Hoggard. When's the last time we talked about Ashley playing in a big-time football game in October? But Ashley, coming off that win last week against New Hanover, that's big time for that program. So congrats to all those kids down there in Carolina Beach. And now they're really fast lightning round. Hey, Grice, it's 1997 again. Your 5-1 Northeast Guilford Rams are going to go play top-ranked, number 1 ranked Dudley Panthers. Hey, we got a football battle capital of the state going on Friday. We know all about the Reedsville Ram. They've won like a gajillion state championships. But, hey, don't forget, West Oaks won the 2011 2A championship. I still remember that game very well when they beat Kinston. That's a big-time team. West Oaks, I got them right there in the top 25 over on Carolina Preps. Go check it out. And then we just talked about it a few minutes ago, the Smoky Mountain Fight Club. You got a trio of games right there that are just as big as it gets. All 6 teams in that conference are playing each other, and wow, that's big. And finally, I've been talking about it all week and last week too. We got to give the 8-man football team a little bit of love. 4-1 Faith Christian is taking on the number 1 ranked team, Wayne Christian. I'm sorry, Faith Christian in Rocky Mount taking on Wayne Christian. Write this name down right now. Shaquan Etheridge. He is number 4. He jumps out on film. He is one of the most exciting football players I've seen. He leads the team in rushing and receiving. He's got about a dozen or more tackles. I think he's already scored like 30 touchdowns. He had a 97-yard rushing touchdown a few weeks ago. He is one of the best looking players I think I've seen in 8-man football in a long time. I think he's got, college football written all over him. And I think that is it. I am going to, now that I've done that, I'm going to drink some Deer Park water because I've got to find some way to catch my breath.
For a crisp, refreshing taste.
Deer Park.
Deer Park.
Deer Park. Deer Park.
That's still good water.
After 150 years, there's only one thing left to say. Deer Park. That's still good water.
How did you all get in here?
All right, here we go. This next week in the greater Charlotte Mecklenburg area, always some key games to talk about. So let's go ahead and get started here. West Charlotte at Huff. Obviously, Nolan Hauser with a big accomplishment earlier this season. West Charlotte imprinting a new or renewed tradition on Senior Drive. Going to take the trip to Cornelius here. Who wants to start us off? West Charlotte and Huff. This is Grinder's Gym for us right here. Gary, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'll start us off. One thing about Coach Griner is he's the ultimate fisherman. And what I mean by that, as coaches, when we look at tape, the head coach says always, find the fish, and that's who we're going to attack. Griner's the ultimate fisherman. He's going to find the weak spot in Huff, and he's going to exploit it. Kicking game, Huff, always. But after that, I'm putting Coach Griner's coaching acumen up against Huff, and I'm looking for an upset.
Speaking of coaching acumen, Andy Capone at Weddington, time and time again, changed the names, changed the faces. It doesn't matter. And as he led on earlier in the season, we think he knows something. Weddington going to Porter Riz. What you got for us, Dale?
Well, two big rivals in Union County, two great football teams. I just look for a great ball game, but Weddington might be a little too much to handle. We'll have to see just how well Porter Ridge, is actually playing. A lot of good football going on in Union County. If I weren't going to the West Charlotte Huff game, I might consider this game.
All right, let's move over a county or two. Let's talk West Iredell and Statesville on the outskirts of Mecklenburg County. So for our outskirts expert, let's go to Cam here. What you got?
Yeah, this could be a interesting matchup if West Iredell can limit possessions. I feel Statesville's offense wasn't really clicking in the first couple games of the season, but have really put up points in droves here lately. Statesville and Hickory are both leading that conference at 3-0 with West Iredell right behind. So I feel like if West Iredell can limit Statesville's possessions, then they can keep this one close. But if not, Statesville they're really on a roll right now.
All right, let's put these last couple games together as we wrap up here. Cam, I know you wanted to say something about Hickory Ridge and Lake Norman, so give us a couple of quick comments on that one. Let's talk Hickory Ridge and Lake Norman, and then we'll circle up to Kings Mountain and South Point, back to Dale and Gary.
Yeah, I think this is an offense that Lake Norman really hasn't seen yet. It's going to be a test for their defense. I've actually got Hickory Ridge in this game. I think now that they're in conference play, they're kind of getting a feel for what they want to do, and I think Grice is really implementing a good offensive game plan. So I think they can win this game and move up in the Greater Metro 4A standing.
Dale, Gary, comments on Hickory Ridge, Lake Norman, and Kings Mountain, South Point.
Well, I'm going to take the opposite on Cam on Hickory Ridge and Lake Norman. Having seen Hickory Ridge, they are not very physical on defense. And we know Lake Norman is going to run the ball, and run the ball some more. So if you don't want to put your pads in there and make tackles, it's going to be a long night for Hickory Ridge. Grice can't show his offensive prowess if they don't have the ball. And that's what Lake Norman is going to do. They're going to play ball control.
Well, like Alex likes to say, get on D, and I think that's the issue with Hickory Ridge is I don't think there's any issue with the offense, but the defense has got to slow the other team down. And this is going to be a tough team to slow down, I think. Like you say, physical team, good running football team.
Speaking about running football, Kings Mountain and South Point, we all know the deal with South Point. So what are we looking for there, gentlemen?
I'll jump in first. So South Point was kind of disappointing a little bit early on in the season. And actually before last week, I was really wondering, was South Point going to be able to pull it together and play? You never count them out, but were they going to be able to hang with those big boys and with West Charlotte creeping up into that crowd? And then all of a sudden, what a game they played against Crest, who I I really think is the best team in the West in 3A. So here we got definitely one of the top 4 teams, and South Point coming off of a not a win, but a very good game. So I think we might have a very good football game here. And this game is in Belmont. So, man, that's like right across the river from me here.
Well, speaking of good football, we're going to be seeing green on Colony Road. Seeing green in many, many ways on Colony Road this Friday when Audrey Kell visits Myers Park. So let's shift that on over. Mr. Grice.
All right, our game of the week, as we stated, is Audrey Kell at Myers Park. This to me, could potentially be the actual SOMEC Conference Championship game. The way these two teams are playing, they both at times shown that they're one of the best in the city, and I think this game will really show who's actually peaking at the right time. The first key, AK must be aware of Jahari McDonald at all times, and I think this is one of those games where each team has that guy that you really got to pay attention to, and Jahari McDonald has been that for Myers Park. Having seen him in the Charlotte Christian game, the first game earlier in the year, he's that do-it-all guy that they can put in the backfield, they can put it slot, motion around, zigzag, do that kind of that do-it-all utility guy for Myers Park. AK's got to have a defensive guy on him, whether it's outside with the corners at Hudson Roller or Daniel Bullock, or whether the next guy we're going to talk about as well, maybe even shadowing him and playing good on good to make sure that they have him contained. In the red zone, of course, Brody Keefe as well, somebody to watch as far as the AK. Brody Keefe is that Myers Park receiver that can go up and get it in the red zone. Myers Park, they got to be aware of Chancellor Bryant. This actual player of the week, Department Player of the Week for the Charlotte Observer a few weeks back, he's done it all. I mean, you talk about special teams, return touchdowns, had a pick 6 in the Marvin Ridge game, had I think like 3-4 catches for over 100+ yards. I mean, he's a guy that he wants the ball in his hand, and every time he has that chance, he's going to make a big play. So I mean, whatever phase of the game, whether you're on offense, whether you're kicking, whether you're on defense and they have them out there, you got to find, I think he's number 12, you got to find him on the field. Someone needs to point him out. They need to be aware of where he is. And then finally, the big key for me when analyzing the offenses versus defense, I think Myers Park's defense has really got to come to play and focus on stopping the run. I got delved really deep into that Audrey Kell Marvin Ridge game, and I thought Audrey Kell had some great success, but the times where they really didn't have success was on 3rd and long. And I think that was one of the things that with Coach Harmon, the offensive coordinator, he dials up some great plays, had some, good tricks and things that he ran in that Marvin Ridge game for some explosive plays. But I thought the times, as for most coordinators, that they're in trouble is on those 3rd and long situations. While he has a good quarterback in that short and intermediate passing game, when he's needed to really push that ball down the field, I thought that's one of those things that he needs to continue to grow and develop with. So I think that's going to be the big key there, that Myers Park defense, who has been in some shootouts as well, see if they can really stop the run and get Audrey Kell in that 3rd and long to get off the field there. So to me, it's going to be a great game. I'm looking forward to seeing this game, later on, of course, as I'll be having my own game, but it's going to be one of the best games of the year, I think.
All right, Grace, that's amazing. I'm amazed every week when you do what you do and Chris does what he does, and it's in one take, and we don't tape it 8,000 times. It just amazes me you guys can do that. But I need you to go back and put on that other jersey you had on so you can tell us who your Mr. Football guys are. Can you go put in the back and put that jersey on for us?
I need to go put it on. All
right, we're going to put it on. Here comes Grace with his Elite 8.
All right, let's get to my 8. We saw Coach Griner's 8 here. Let's go ahead and look at these 8 to round out our total 16. Again, this is in alphabetical order, and no way is this list ranked. My first guy we have here, Nolan Hoosier. If we've got to put a guy here that's a special teams participant, he's a guy that's going to be one of the best. I mean, you're talking about maybe one of the best kickers in this nation, committed to Clemson. We know what he can do, how he's good. I told you he has that Stephen Curry range on the football field. As soon as you cross the 50, you'd feel like he's in range, and he's done that with some over 50-yard field goals this year and been big, of course, in one of their biggest games of the year versus Chambers, leading them to a victory with his field goals. Natavius Husky out of Crest, I think this is one of the guys that has emerged again to really, if we look later on and see that he's a finalist, I think the beginning of the year, the way he played, looking at that Gaffney game, just how he really took over that game and is leading Crest to an exceptional season. He's that guy that I think is really transformative and one of those guys that has taken this season by storm. The third guy, Jonathan Paler. I mean, he's committed to NC State. He's 5'9", 170. He's a guy that's a receiver. He's an ATH because he can do it all. If you put him in the backfield, he has that athletic ability to be dominant there. So a guy we're looking to be, an incredible player for Burlington Cummings this year. Jamal Rule out of Salisbury. I mean, an excellent player last year. And Jamaica Wells, they had graduated. What do? Bring in another running back who's top 50 in the nation for rushing yards so far this year. A phenomenal player as he continues to lead Salisbury. Next is Alex Taylor, 6'2", I think it's about 170-pound receiver out of Grimsley. Big-time four-star receiver here again. Has made some amazing catches this year. I've seen on Twitter some of the highlights of some of those catches in the end zone where he's dragging feet, making it a handful for any defender to have to get in front of him and guard game over game. Devon Thomas out of Roseville. We talked about Braden Atkinson. We've talked about receivers, Noah Rogers in the past. New head coach Rainier Rackley, a former running back. Of course, he's going to have a guy in there that's going to tote that rock. And Devon Thomas fits that bill. We know they played big games like Butler. They played other top teams as they're getting into conference play. His stats and his numbers have him, really high in the state as far as rushing yards this year. We talked last week in Grice's Game of the Week about Jordan Young being the two sides of the ball star for Monroe under Coach Johnny Sowell. He had a big game against Forest Hills in that big rivalry game. He's a guy on both sides of the ball. As even last year, a guy that had, I think it was 4 interceptions in a game. Someone that you don't want to really worry about on that defensive side of the ball, but on offense you have to worry because the offense is going to flow through him in a big way. And ironically here, Malcolm Ziegler, probably our best athlete of the bunch, Grinder. He's a 10.79 100-meter dash guy. He's a big-time athlete, can play the DB position, committed to UNC. Definitely a guy out of that Raleigh area that I think is one that's an amazing player and somebody that you're going to have to watch out for. And I think he's does a great job of rounding out our list here. So, Grinder, we have an amazing list of 16, and I'll look forward to seeing what we can do as we get this list down. It's going to be tough. It's going to be some long nights, but I've got faith in us that we'll get to our best.
Now, this is our final 16 right now. It does not mean that someone cannot jump in there and climb into it while we break it down. When we go to 12, when we go to 8, if someone keeps performing and they're outside the list, they're around 19 or 20, they can climb back into the rankings. Just keep balling, and you can get up there.
Yep, the regular season's about to end soon. We've got to trim it to 8 soon. We'll be watching. Hopefully we'll have some big performances.
Deer Park is celebrating its 150th anniversary.
Deer Park? That's good water.
You can taste how pure Deer Park is.
Deer Park, that's good water.
Deer Park, that's still good water.
Oh, yeah.
You know what time it is. Let's lock that door.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome.
All right, man, here we are once again heading into week 8 of the 2023 high school football season. I got my man, Coach Grice, on one side, Coach Griner on the other. Grice, the number one voice in high school football in this state, or at least that's what I say. And, hey, we're going to get after it here, coach versus coach. I know we did the coin toss before the game, and Coach Griner decided that he wanted to defer to the second half. So, Coach Grice, his first question is coming to you. South Mecklenburg, we already talked about them earlier in the show. They started off the season 0-4, but they've now won 3 straight, had that big victory over Palisades Friday night. Can the Sabres win the title? They got big games coming up against Ardrey Kell and Myers Park.
Yeah, I mean, can they? Sure. I think it's really going to be a tough battle for them. And I think this conference has just been, I feel like, just unpredictable. I feel like once Palisades came to this conference, a couple of years now, it's just been so unpredictable as far as the teams, and what they're able to do. You saw Myers Park start off super slow, Ardrey Kell kind of iffy, and South Meck as well. And all 3 of these teams now arguably are playing some of the hottest football within the city. So I'm going to do the thing I shouldn't do and doubt, and I might be mean for it, as damn well I should, because we all love Joe Evans. We know what kind of man he is. But I'm going to stick with what I said with my Grice's right prediction that that game with Ardrey Myers Park, that winner is going to win the league title. I do think, Joe is doing something great. I know he has some young guys that he's playing out there, and I think in the future that they're going to be that team to reckon. But I think the the Black Chris James, the one coaching Myers Park over there on Colony Road, has done an excellent job, as well as Coach Yakum and Ardrey, and they've been there as far as Ardrey. I mean, those two teams, as far as the Ardrey side of it, have been that team that's really been the banner carrier for that conference. So, I hate to go against that, Joe. Don't beat me up too bad, but I'll take it because I understand what kind of man you are. I'm going to go on the
What
other
do you
side.
what do you project? What do you project South Make to finish in the conference? What place?
I'm gonna say second or third. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be so close because if you look at the games that they've played, you look at how those three teams are playing right now. You just don't know. And I think that's part of the kind of mystique is that these teams are all 3-3 and 3 or 4. You don't know what you're going to get, and we know we coach high school kids. Hey, today again, we went out there and put 50 points and had 500 yards on South Iredale. My offense today, you would have seen that offense. They probably couldn't have put 50 yards on South Iredale. They were high school kids we're dealing with, but I think we give a shot though for sure.
Well, I mean, I think Joe Evans lifting on game day is finally catching up. Like they started off very slow. Lifting on game day is paying off. I think he found out a way to put 13 guys on the field and they're running 44 personnel. I don't know what he's doing. I haven't watched him on film, but I believe in Joe Evans, what he does. I think he can motivate people better than anybody else in that conference. I would put him against any coach there is when it comes to motivation and getting the most out of the kids. So if anybody can do it and show what it's about, and they catch a little magic, a little lightning right now, I think they can win the conference. They're still going to have to outcoach some guys and scheme them up, but I believe in what Joe does, and I'm gonna give him a shot here.
Hey, saying the question, but Sam, hey, who's going to win a lifting contest, a bodybuilding contest, you or Joe?
Well, Joe outweighs me by like 90 pounds right now, so Joe. Yeah, Joe used to be like a large hat size, like I would say like a 7 5/8. Now he's definitely a 9 1/4. And so that little bit of extra brain of working so hard to get his team where it needs to be, he is pushed through the limits of I can't live with him right now. Now, I have gotten higher numbers than he's ever done in his life. I have to see him post a few things. I got video proof to prove it, but he's got me right now in the gym, for sure.
Well, I think Joe Evan likes being the hunter. I think he just likes us to keep picking against him, so I'm going to keep doing that. I would hire Joe Evans to coach any team that I was principal of. So good job for him for keeping that South Make program in the right direction. All right, Coach Griner, sticking with you. Second question here, Coach versus Coach. What should the Panthers do? Should they sit Bryce Young? Should they change the play caller? Coach Frank Reich? Both. Whatever. What do you think?
If they could, I think they would want to go back, and I'm saying Bryce Young is going to be a great football player. But when you give up all the assets to go get this player, is he that much better than everyone else that was in the draft? As of right now, no, it looks like it was a bad decision. What we should have done is kept the 9th pick overall. No disrespect to Bryce Young, but for him to be worth what we gave up, he has to become the Peyton Mannings. He has to become some of the other guys that were taken early on in the draft, first overall, like those guys, to maybe make up for what we gave up. And as of right now, we are going to give up the number 1 pick overall because we are, as this moment, the worst NFL football team. So we will have the number 1 pick overall, which the Bears will get. And if things don't change, we could do that 2 years in a row. So I don't think that we understand. I know we were trying to do a big splash and try to sell tickets, and probably there's other different algorithms that we were trying to accomplish. But as of right now, I wish we could hit a time machine, go back and just say, you know what, let's take the 9th pick overall. And then guess what? If we were getting the number 1 pick overall this year, it's almost a for sure thing. The number 1 pick, Caleb Williams, coming in would have maybe even been a better situation, not giving up all the assets.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a situation of where, you got to let Bryce Young play through this. I mean, I think, too many people, and it's kind of what's wrong with the NFL culture now. I mean, he has a few, bad games that, again, most football people can clearly see he doesn't have what it takes to be a successful team. There's nothing about this team offensively that says 7, 8, 9 wins. So in my mind, you have to sit the play caller. You've got to do more things to highlight what Bryce Young is good at. That's one of the cool things, I've sat through, good and bad with the 49ers and being a fan with them. But one great thing about it is we took a 7th round guy who, doesn't have all these physical amazing attributes. If you watch Iowa State football, sure you saw him, but most people didn't know things about Brock Purdy. But it's doing things to make him look good. Even watching Sam Darnold in preseason, after all this crap was talked about him in Carolina, how terrible he is, getting in that offense and being able to generate explosive plays just because of what you're able to do. And again, sure, it's able to Debo Samuel and these other things, but you can get Bryce out of the pocket. He's short. Get him out of the pocket. You can do things to help get the ball out of his hands quickly, establish quick game, establish the running game, do all of these things and not just have him drop back and wait 5 seconds to throw the ball to receivers who can't get open anymore. And I think, I was looking at some Twitter, highlights and cut-ups where it's like, where would you throw the ball? And it's like you see 5 guys and every guy's covered. And it's like, okay, now we see. But the big thing is Bryce needs game reps. Sitting him is not going to help this situation.
No, I
get
agree.
him in there, let him really get to know the game. And I think all these people that think they know football think that he can sit on the sideline and get better and be fine. Let him go through it, let him build, and let him do what he can.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I could spend 30 minutes talking about what they've done wrong.
Yeah. Man, 2 great answers from both of you, men. I really, really appreciate that. Hey, Coach Grice, I would let you catch your breath, but I won't bring it right back at you for Coach or for question 3 here in Coach versus Coach. The 49ers, the Charlotte 49ers, 1-4. Are you surprised? Does Biff have the team on the right track, or what? What do you think, Coach?
I'm not surprised, and all that crap I got from Langston clipping this last time. People talking junk. Well, my high school now has a better record, so hey, you can't share that anymore, and all the little crap I got. But I'm not surprised. Like again, when you don't have solid quarterback play, you're not going to be successful. I think in the NFL and college football, it's a very quarterback-driven league. We can talk about all the things that are going on with Colorado, even as we were talking about them. Shedeur Sanders is playing his butt off. That's another reason why it doesn't matter what team they're playing there, but to hang in there. This is a quarterback-driven college, and NFL. These are quarterback-driven places. So if you don't have that consistent quarterback play, that's what the problem is. Again, the defense and everybody can get better. I watched some of that SMU game, but the thing that I saw was the offense being able to inconsistently go down the field, sustain drives, and actually score points, or even when they get in the red zone, ensure they're actually converting into touchdowns and not field goals. That's the problem. I don't know about the right track until they get the right quarterback in there, and I think that was the problem of the last administration. Healy had a freaking walk-on quarterback who had a great year, but then couldn't replicate that, while we're letting all of these top quarterbacks from this area go right out the door and go right out other places.
Like you said, the question is, does Biff have him on the right track? I think Biff has done everything he possibly can as a head coach to raise the awareness, the excitement of UNCC football. Like, they're doing a phenomenal job. They have been in some barn burner games. They competed with some of the best teams they are. And, Maryland's unbelievable team for them to go against. Florida's an unbelievable team for them to go against. If you look at their track record in the past years, have they improved greatly? Yes. Has the schedule changed greatly? Yes. Have they came all the way full circle to be able to see that growth? It's hard to see it when it's 1-4. Like Grice said, quarterback play is important and things of that nature. You can't go mano-a-mano with teams and try to do the same things they're doing. We're running spread offense, and we're trying to do similar concepts, and their top to bottom depth of their team is a lot better than we are. We have to get more creative. I think defense is doing a phenomenal job. I think the defensive staff is doing a great job of giving their teams an opportunity to play or be in the game. But if you have a little bit harder time, if the quarterback can't do certain things that Caleb Williams can do, and all these other teams having problems with, what creativity are we doing to create offense? Are we creating illusion? Are we using manipulation? Are we doing things that are innovative? I think that's what you have to be able to do, and I don't think we're quite there yet. But the question, Biff has us in the right place. I think he's improved greatly, this UNCC team, and I think you'll see that greatly as we progress through the years.
Griner, he had 107 yards in a college football game. You're not without 700 yards rushing. You ain't winning games like that in this college game anymore. 107.
Who had 107? You said the quarterback.
And it wasn't Jones. Yeah, it wasn't Jones quarterback. But yeah, I want to take a shot. Enjoy it.
All right, it's time to go, but it's time. As Mr. Rogers would always get ready to put his sweater on. We got to give Sam his one shot.
Well, I don't know if I've had a final thought in a long time.
You haven't. You've been selling out on your spot. I'm gonna give it to Gary.
I ain't nobody be selling that. It's been giving away. It's like I'm Oprah now. I just give stuff away and don't have a final thought anymore.
Well, it's a final thought for you.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. All right. Final thought is just I absolutely love the fan base of West Charlotte. Please, I'm gonna need you guys to travel up to Cornelius. Their fan base is gonna be unbelievable. Let's match that. At our home games, West Charlotte has been amazing. It's been one of the best places I've been around in a long time for home games. But I want to see how well we travel. Our team is doing some great things this year. We're going to need your support. That fan support could easily give us 3 to 4 points, and we might need that this game. So love to see you in Cornelius Friday night.
All right, well, that sounds final thoughts. We had another good show. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate the guru being top guru level again. I love it. Go ahead, Dale. 30 seconds.
No, I don't need 30 seconds. Joe, I need you to send me a photo doing this.
Oh, you need a muscle photo?
I've got an image that I'm gonna create.
All right, we need a muscle photo.
I've got the other person's image already.
We need a muscle photo from Joe Evans. But hey, guys, thank y'all for watching this. Appreciate it. We'll be back next week with another episode. That's Coach Griner. The West Charlotte football coach says he's going to win the 3A state championship this year. The Jonathan Grice, the number 2 voice high school football. Chris Hughes, number 1 voice high school football. Cameron Williams, the guru in training, who we got to get to start talking on the show. And we got Gary Richmond, the longtime CMS coach, and Dale Ross, the historian. I'm Langston, and we are Talking Preps.